Hey everybody, just wanted to see how everybody's doing today. We're sitting down with Shelaine Miller. She is the occupational health nurse consultant with Liberty Mutual. And today we're going to ask Shelaine a few questions. Primarily, we've all been hearing a lot about dynamic warm-ups here at UPS, so we're going to talk to her today and find out what the big push is behind dynamic warm-ups and what the big fuss is behind them. So here we go. Welcome.
Thank you.
The first question we have is dynamic warm-ups. We've heard a lot about them. Mm-hmm. What are they?
So the dynamic warm-ups are a series of warm-ups that a person can do to physically ready their body for work. So it's a little bit different from what UPS was doing prior to, but because we know that the UPS job functions are so incredibly physical, we started to then look at how can we properly warm up the body and warm it for any type of physical activity.
Okay. So just getting ourselves prepared to do the job without any injury.
We're trying to prevent injury,
okay.
Exactly.
Okay. Now, what is the purpose? I guess we just answered that question. What is the purpose of dynamic warm-ups?
Well, yes, and so going beyond like that generalized purpose of injury prevention and readying the body, I'll tell you a little bit about how it readies the body.
Okay.
So when you are doing the dynamic warm-up, like what you see on the screen back behind us, you'll notice that their bodies are in constant motion. So when we start that, what's going to happen is your heart and your lungs are really going to kick into gear. So your heart's going to start beating a bit faster. That's going to cause the circulation of the blood to flow a bit quicker. It's going to start waking up that whole oxygen delivery and readying the muscles for work. In addition to that, if you'll look at like the shoulders and the joints, ankles, what happens is we have some synovial fluid in our joints. So when we are moving those body parts, we're actually warming it up. And we like to kind of like give people that analogy of motor oil, right?
Okay.
So we know that when it sits there and it's not warm, it's a little bit more thick, a little more viscous, right? But once you crank it up, that engine gets warm and it starts flowing.
Right.
Same thing with our joints. That synovial fluid warms up and it allows us to have better range of motion.
Okay, cool, very good. Are there different types of dynamic warm-ups?
Yes. So we have some for non-operations, which are more non-sedentary, or the sedentary jobs, excuse me. So people that are sitting at a desk, we do have some elements designed specifically for them. But then we also have operations like what you see behind me, and those are designed for people in package, feeders, in the hub, preload, for those individuals to warm up their bodies for work.
Okay. What's the difference between a dynamic warm-up and static stretching?
Okay, so that's a great question, and I know it's very hard. UPS is very used to static stretches,
okay.
And those are great. But if we think about what we've been seeing in the gyms, what we see our athletes doing prior to either a practice or a game, you'll notice that when you arrive, you are going to warm up the body, right? And what you're doing is you're doing some movements that do exactly what I just talked about with the dynamic warm-up. Wakes up the cardiovascular system, gets our joints moving. Same exact thing with dynamic warm-up. It's meant to not only warm up the body, but it's also going to give individuals a chance with each repetition to push themselves a little bit further, right? So
Yep.
like for example, with push away, if you're going down into a squat, well, you know, with each squat, you can go just a little bit further if your body doesn't have any kind of medical conditions that would prohibit that, right? With a static stretch, those are great too, because those allow for the opportunity to gain more flexibility.
Okay.
So when we're doing static stretching, it's going to elongate the muscles and going to allow us to become a bit more flexible. So they definitely have a place in our routines. However, when we're talking about readying the body for work, we want to make sure it's a dynamic one because that's the one that's preparing for activity.
Okay. So would it be safe to say that a static stretch is focused on one muscle group at a time versus a dynamic warm-up, which seems like it's the whole body per se?
I think that is a very great observation, and I would say that's 100% on point.
Cool. All right. So we know the benefits then of dynamic warm-ups are to loosen up the body, get the body moving in motion, they're in sync. And are there any other benefits of the dynamic warm-ups?
Yeah, I think like you can, if you've gone through all 5 elements, you can tell you start to breathe heavier, right? So when you're out and, you know, you're waiting, for example, in feeders, if you're waiting for a load, that's an opportunity to even like get some fitness in, right? Because when you do all 5 elements, it truly does make you sweat a bit, and it's a great way to stay warm. But let's think about our health and wellness overall. So if we have the opportunity to increase our fitness in some way, this would be a really great way to do that.
Sure. Okay. Now, last question. How do you do a dynamic warm-up?
How do you do it? Well, first of all, you know, you have a great leader such as yourself that's been trained in them, and you teach people how to do them.
Okay.
One thing that I would like to say is I would like to just offer this piece of advice to everyone. So this is an opportunity for you to make sure that your body stays healthy and strong. We want to make sure that we are thinking about the overall big picture of what we do here at UPS, right? Your job is very physical. I want to make sure that we are staying injury-free so that you can enjoy everything you work so hard to earn.
Right.
So that doesn't get into how, like, should we demonstrate something together as far as how to do it?
Sure, why not?
Okay, so let's go ahead and do one.
Okay. So the warm-up we just did was called the push-away.
Yes.
Okay. What part of our bodies did we benefit from by doing that warm-up?
Okay, so there are 4 target body parts that we just really warmed up with this particular dynamic warm-up.
Yeah.
And that would be your legs, your ankles, your back, as well as your knees.
Okay. So by doing this warm-up, now how did that benefit our knees?
Okay, well, so if we think about our body as, remember that one song we all learned as kids, it's like ankle bones connected to the knee bone, hip bone. Well,
Right.
It's the same exact thing. So when we are working on strengthening our hips, what happens is that's actually going to help keep our ankles in alignment. So it's actually going to make our hips strong enough to help protect our ankles from sprains and strains.
Okay. Now are the other, is each dynamic warm-ups targeted to a specific part of the body, or are they all kind of intertwined so they all work together, working the whole body?
Right, so we're going to get an entire body warm-up simply because the entire body is engaged.
Okay.
However, each element of the dynamic warm-up will have specific target body parts.
Okay. Okay, very good. Well, I want to thank you for coming in and doing this video with us today. We certainly appreciate you being here and educating us on a great way to get a little exercise, stay healthy, and reach that goal on Friday night.
Absolutely, and thank you for having me, and it's always been a pleasure to work with you, and I'm so proud of your operations bringing the dynamic warm-up to feeders to teach them about how this is going to help prevent injury, right? We do not want people to get injured on the job. We definitely want them to go home just a little bit better every day, and so if we can do that via a dynamic warm-up or some education, job well done.
Perfect. And I hope that we can invite you back for more interviews in the future.
I would love it.
Great.